prayer of forgiveness is a prayer practice that was given to us by Mary Mrozowski, who was one of the founders of Contemplative Outreach. Mary died in 1993 here in Colorado, but her spirit lives on in all of us. And I would say that she was one of the greatest mentors of my life. And so I felt really called after Mary died to share her prayer practice. She has it on tape, and it's in a series called Beyond Centering Prayer. But I'd like to share the practice with you today because I think it's one of the, as Mary would say, it's the key to liberation of our inner spirit. And I'd like to tell you how it all came together for Mary because it was what was going on in her life that drove her to have to get this prayer practice. And it gave her such freedom in her life, and I certainly have experienced the same. And so I really do believe it's the key to liberation within us. And I think it's as powerful as any of the other prayer practices that we share in Contemplative Outreach. But let me show you, or share with you, how this all began with Mary. Mary, after 20 years of marriage, her husband asked her for a divorce. And it was the most upsetting thing, I think, of her life. And the rug was just pulled out from under her. And she had 2 children. And what she did, she quit her job and took in laundry. She said, like Anthony, I went to the tombs. And her rage was taken out by her ironing and by her doing these shirts and all that came to her. But she said, I was very classy in the way I dealt with this rage. I didn't throw dishes. I didn't break furniture. She said, but I never could allow myself to even see my husband, Joe. When he came to the door to pick up the girls on the weekend, my blood pressure would go to the ceiling, so I couldn't even look at him. But she said I was classy. She said the girls would come home after a day with their father, and they would sit down and she'd feed them milk and cookies and pump them to find out what was really going on. And so she'd say, well, now, where did you go to eat today? And they said, Howard Johnson. And she'd say, again? And she said, my venom was just coming out of my mouth. And she said, but it was classy. I really had it under control. Well, this went on, and the girls were not blind to their mother's upset with their father. But it came to a pinnacle of rage when one day the girls came home and they were sharing their milk and cookies. And Janet happened to say, Mom, Dad is dating. Well, I think it was like a sword went into Mary's heart in rage. And so what she said to the girls was, well, now, your father has a right to be happy. And I know God forgives adultery. Well, the look on their daughters and those girls' faces was a nut to cut Mary to the quick. And it was the wake-up call from the Lord to say, look, this negative energy of resentment and of hatred and all that you feel that Joe has done to you is culminated in not only destroying you, but you're destroying your daughters. And I think it was the grace of God that said, Mary, you've got to do something. This cannot go on because you cannot, these darling girls of yours are just being destroyed by your anger. So the next day she was going to the store for starch, and she passed a bookstore. And she went in and she found, it just kind of popped out at her, Norman Vincent Peale's little booklet called The Prayer of Forgiveness. And she said, I need this. And she said it was only a quarter so I could afford it. Now, I want you to know, Mary's a little Italian, but she's the most fiery woman I ever met and always shot straight from the hip. But she dealt with herself that way, too. And she was honest to realize that she had to do it. So she took her book, went home, and when the girls went to school the next day, she sat down in her chair and started doing that prayer of forgiveness. Now, this is before she started centering prayer. And the prayer form is this. What you do is you go down inside into the core of your being, as we do in centering prayer. And in the presence of the Spirit of God, you allow that person that you have these whatever that you cannot forgive to come into your presence. And you say to that person how they have hurt, how they've offended, or how they've traumatized you. And you spill it all out, and you can be very clear with good detail about what was going on. But at the end of that, you have to say, I forgive you. And Mary said, you know, I could just spit it out. And you don't have to feel it. You just have, just like we talked about in the welcoming prayer, you have to decide. That's not your feelings. It's your choice and your will to forgive. And so, but the other side of the coin is this. Then you ask the person that's in your presence, how have I hurt you? How have I offended you? Well, she said in the beginning, Joe didn't have anything to say. Well, of course, you know, she hadn't done anything wrong. It was Joe who had done it. Well, after a while, Joe had some things to say too. And this process went on morning and night for about 7 months. This is a very healing prayer, and we're healed at the very core of our being, because when we can't forgive, what do? We carry the baggage of hatred, resentment, envy, jealousy, and it shuts down our heart. And we become cold people. We're incapable of loving when we carry that baggage around for a very long time. And also, if we continue to carry that kind of thing without letting it go, because our bodies are warehouses of all this emotional junk, we can physically get sick. And so it's our choice if we want to carry around this baggage. And often what happens is the people who say they want to hold on to their little hurts, they want to be that victim, you know, and they're self in their little pity pot. But what happens is that they don't want to take responsibility for their own behavior. They'd rather blame somebody else. And so for us to be honest and say we want to forgive, we're taking responsibility for our own behavior. So in any case, Mary did that for about 7 months. And the forgiveness process, as it heals us, is really very gradual. But about 7 months later, one Sunday morning, Joe calls for the girls, and they were having breakfast. And so Mary answers the phone, and she says, well, hello, Joe, how are you? And Joe says, who's this? Why, she said, Joe, this is Mary. Well, Mary, is everything all right? Well, of course, Joe, how are you doing? How's your mother? And she chatted away like, you know, a long-lost friend for about 5 minutes, and then she turned the phone over to one of the girls. So when she sat back down at the table, the girls were saying, oh, Mother, we didn't know who you were talking to. And Judy says, oh, well, she was talking to Dad. And Janet says, oh, no, Mother never talked to Dad like that. What had happened? Over that 7 months period, the healing of Mary's spirit, where she could unconditionally love Joe, accept the fact that he was going to marry someone else. And she said that freedom of spirit and unconditional love allowed that family to celebrate weddings, baptisms, and they did not spoil family occasions for their daughters, because Mary learned how to forgive at the very core. This is not something we do in our head and say, oh, I forgive you. We have to forgive in our whole being, because we carry all that resentment, all of that. So that's how powerful this prayer practice is. And to give you one more example, Mary, for her last 3 years, taught centering prayer and visited a maximum security prison in upstate New York. And she taught the men centering prayer, and then she taught them the prayer of forgiveness. And then she gave them this little tape so that they could listen to this process that this little meditation that I'm going to share with you in a minute. And so after the first month, this one guy came running up to her at the break, and she said, Mary, I've got to tell you what happened. I did what you told me. After centering prayer, I'd sit in the cell and I'd listen to that tape and I'd do the prayer of forgiveness. He said, I've been waiting for my father to come into the chair. But this woman she came in and sat down, and I said, you got to leave, I'm waiting for my father. And so she wouldn't leave. So he said, well, I guess I have to deal with her. So he began to tell her how he believed she was responsible for all the problems in his life, and also for being here in this prison for 17 years. And so he went on, and then he finally said, and he could just spit it out because he didn't feel it, I forgive you, I forgive you. And then he asked her, how have I hurt and offended you? Well, in the beginning, she didn't have too much to say, and he concluded the prayer. It's about a 20-minute process. But the next day, he went and did it again. And Dad didn't come in again. She came back. And for about 3 weeks, she and Sal had a dialogue, and she began to tell him what he had done to her. And he was surprised because it was true. He had done those things. And you see, what happened in the process, by blaming her, he wouldn't look at himself. But in the exchange and in that dialogue, they had to take responsibility both for their behaviors. But what he was so excited about was that he got a letter that day. And he said, Mary, I got this letter, and here's what it said. Dear Sal, I just have to write this letter to ask your forgiveness for what I have done to you in your life. And she went on to enumerate all the things that they talked about in that prayer of forgiveness. And he said, Mary, what happened? And she said, just what happened. The vibrations of love and compassion that flow out into the world, and she got the message. She had a conversion experience. She became a reborn again Christian. And her heart was touched. She had to write that letter and ask his forgiveness. So that is the tremendous power of this prayer. And in my own experience, I have found that in doing it, and sometimes if the hurts are deep, it takes a while. But if you do it over and over, and at the very core of your being, you find that the Spirit of God is with you and gives you the grace for you to be healed at the very core of your being. In fact, that healing goes on whether you ever see that person again, whether you ever say, I'm sorry. That is not, you're healed at the very core of your being. Father William Menninger has written a wonderful book called The Prayer of Forgiveness. And one day he asked me, he said, what's the difference between what I teach in my book and this practice you teach of Mary Mrozowski's? And I said, Father, you give the theology behind what Mary teaches in practice. And that process of forgiveness is an ever-deepening process. And but when you go at the very core of your being, you move from your head to your heart. And that's where grace transforms you, and you let go of that energy. Just as God transforms the energy in the welcoming prayer into love energy, so God does this with our cooperation and our willingness to forgive. You know, Jesus gave us only one prayer, and that was the Our Father. And he gave us the power to forgive. And we must forgive others as God has forgiven us. And in fact, if we want to look to see what God thinks about forgiveness and love of others, we can take a little quote from the Old Testament from the book of Leviticus, and then I'm going to take a quote from Matthew just to show you the progression of attitudes about forgiveness. God says to his people wandering around in the desert in Leviticus 19, "You shall not bear hatred for your neighbor in your heart, and though you may have cause to reprove your neighbor, do not incur sin because of him or her. Take no revenge and cherish no grudge against any of those of your own country. You shall love your neighbor as yourself, and I am your God." So God is saying to us, we must forgive from our heart. And we have to forgive or we can't love. It makes it, we're incapacitated. And in Matthew, this is what Matthew says. "You have heard the commandment, an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. But what I say to you is, offer no resistance to injury. When a person strikes you on the right cheek, turn and offer the other. If anyone wants to go to law over your shirt, hand over your coat as well. Should anyone press you into service for 1 mile, go 2 miles. Give to the one who begs from you, and do not turn your back on the borrower. You have heard the commandment, you shall love those of your own country, but hate your enemy. My command is, love your enemies and pray for your persecutors." Now that's what God is asking us to do. This prayer practice helped Mary do that. She had to let go of her resentment, all that had happened to her. And you know, it was really something. Here was a committed Catholic woman, and divorce was not an option for her. And all of a sudden, her husband asks her for a divorce. And so her whole world turned upside down. But you know, I think that how Mary came out of that and how she was transformed, the power of this prayer was one of the reasons that she was able to open up and become such a loving human being. So we all have the power to forgive. And this prayer heals the unconscious. It heals the body, the mind, and the spirit. You know, even if you think you have been affronted, the body doesn't know that this was just an illusion or an idea of yours, that it didn't really physically happen. But the body needs to be healed. We're carrying that all in our being. So it is our gift and our inheritance to forgive and to forgive those who have hurt us and to ask for forgiveness. So it's a powerful prayer practice, and I'd like to share it with you now. So what I'd like you to do is just close your eyes, relax, and I'm going to do this guided meditation. Now this is on, Mary has it on tape, so it would be a nice thing for you to be able to take home and put it on your cassette and to do this practice. And after we go through this, I'll give you a few more ideas about how and when to do this practice. But first of all, she helps us relax before we can go inside into the bosom. Here in our chest, it is a visualization, imagination to get us to go down inside. Now, if we're doing centering prayer, we can do this right afterwards, and you don't have to do this relaxation exercise. Or you may have another way of doing it for yourself. But for now, this was the exercise Mary did to help us relax and then to go inside into the core of our being where the Spirit of God dwells. So if you just follow along with me, as we share this meditation together. So take some deep breaths and just breathe in and breathe out. I'm going to suggest that you begin to focus. Take your mind's eye, that intuitive eye, and bring your attention to the top of your head and to begin to relax your scalp. Relax, relax, relax. And you can silently say the word relax, and that's to transmit to your body, now is the time to relax. Relax your scalp and the muscles of your face. Bring your focus, your inner eye, to the muscles of your face and just begin to relax your muscles down your neck. Relax, relax. Now allow your tongue to float in your mouth, not touching the roof of your mouth or the floor of your mouth. Just let it float there. And what that does is bring your body, your mind, and your spirit into balance. So float your tongue. Now bring your attention to your throat area, softly and gently, using the word relax, relax. The back of your neck. Take your inner eye and bring your focus to the back of your neck very silently and gently. Relax, relax, relax. Now bring your attention to your shoulders. Relax your shoulders and your upper arms. Let them hang there loose. Relax, relax. That inner eye, that focusing is like that laser beam, powerful and penetrating, a great light. Now bring that focus to your lower arms and relax, relax. Now, bring your attention to your upper back and relax the muscles of the upper back. And just move your gaze and focus down the spine and up, gently moving down and up, and relaxing the muscles connected with the spine. Relax, relax, relax. Bring your focus and attention to your abdomen and relax those muscles. Gently relax, relax, relax. Now bring your focus and attention to the thighs of your legs, relaxing those muscles. Gently relaxing the muscles past your knees to the calves of your legs. Relax, relax. And allow the stress and discomfort leave your body through your toes, becoming very relaxed. Now bring your attention and your focus to the chest area. And just allow that light to move in a circular motion around the bosom, resting, open, relaxing. Now enter the bosom, that space between the chest. Be one with that focus and that light. And enter the bosom moving through a passageway that is warm and dark and safe. And move down the passageway relaxed and safe. Moving deeper and deeper through the passageway, moving slowly and relaxed. And at the end of the passageway is a doorway filled with light. And move towards the doorway filled with light. And give yourself permission to move through the doorway, moving out into a meadow that is filled with light and sunshine. Feel a soft breeze that just moves across your face. And using all your senses of smell and touch, taste and sight, move down this pathway, allowing the sun to warm you on the path to your sacred place. The sacred place that's filled with the light of the Spirit. Enter into your sacred place and rest in the bosom of the Spirit, allowing yourself to be held, to be nurtured, resting in the bosom of the Spirit, using all your senses. Be present to the Spirit, and in just a few moments, a person will appear. And when that person appears, if you would just invite that person into your sacred place, use the person's name. Allow that person to enter your sacred place. And if no one comes, you can call forth a person in your heart you know that you want to visit with and to forgive. You and the person, in the presence of the Spirit, experiencing a very safe place, begin to share with the person how you have been hurt, traumatized, and offended. And be very specific, sharing your feelings, your thoughts, and your experience of how you have been hurt. Allow yourself to be open and to share your pain, your experience in your relationship with this person. And now, tell the person that you forgive them. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. I forgive you. Remember, you don't have to worry about how you feel. It's your choice. And now ask the person how you have offended them, how you have hurt or traumatized that person. Ask, how have I hurt you? And just wait for an answer. How have I offended you? Now ask for forgiveness. Forgive me. Forgive me for offending you. Forgive me. Forgive me. And now allow the person to leave your sacred place. Always open if the person needs to return. Allow the person to leave as you continue to rest in the bosom of the Spirit, of the grace of God. Resting and resting. And now, prepare to leave your favorite and sacred place. It will be easier to return to if you choose. And feeling refreshed, move down the path toward the door filled with light. And give yourself permission to move through the doorway into the passageway, feeling safe and warm and light. And just move into the chamber of your heart and the bosom, and allow yourself to emerge into a normal state of consciousness very slowly. Slowly and safely. And when you are ready, open your eyes. Now, this is just one example or one experience that I've led you through today, but I encourage you to do it often. And if I have a sheet that I'll pass out that you can take with you at home, you might even want to record it yourself as you listen to yourself do it, or if you'd like to buy one of Mary's tapes, that you can begin to see how important this is to be free to love. And this is what this does. Remember, it's the key to inner liberation, for us to be able to love. And God is purifying us at ever-deepening levels. So we no longer hold on and have that pull inside of us when some people come into your presence that you dislike or who have hurt you, or you run, you have an aversion. So it's very important. And you know, we won't be in guilt more than 30 seconds if we learn how to, and Thomas says any guilt beyond that's neurotic. So this really helps us let go. You can use it after your centering prayer if you have time, because you're already down in that deep place. This could be the same person for weeks, just as it was for Mary. And so it's the person that you have to deal with. Usually we allow the Spirit to bring someone in, but I found from experience that if nothing happens, I suggest that you bring the person that you really want to deal with. But you'll find that you're going to be surprised who the Spirit wants you to look at. And it can be old wounds. It can be with people who are deceased. Or it can be with your parents and you thought you dealt with everything and all of a sudden they pop up again. So it's really important to know that we follow the Spirit. Remember, you wait on the Spirit too of how to do reparation if it's needed. Not on your time, but with the inspiration of the Spirit. You may feel called to write a letter of apology and ask for forgiveness. But it's not necessary for the healing because you're healed at the deepest level. I will forever be grateful to Mary Brzezowski for this prayer practice. It has led to such freedom for me. I have been able to go through, and deal with very deep hurts. And by doing this practice often, it released that pain and energy, and I could love that person unconditionally with no resentment or hurt. And what I found out is the only person I was hurting was myself carrying that baggage around. And it made me incredibly free to love and to drop my prejudices and begin to look at the God in that person at a deeper level and to know they were on their own journey. And my job was to unconditionally love them no matter what they do to me and as God has asked me to do. So this is a great legacy of Mary, and I just say to you what Mary would just say to you, just do it.